Joining me now is Michael Weiner as we talk about a guy by the name of Mitch Wexler. I've put an email into him and a call to try to get him on my broadcast. This is a whistleblower. He is warning that we have, as of 2025, $5.1 trillion in inflated school board debt tied to manipulated property appraisals. He's claiming that these overvaluations are designed to extract higher taxes from property owners, with the funds funneled into bonds that aren't being paid down, but instead rolled into new debt packages. He claims this is going to make the 2008 crash look like a walk through the park. 5.1 trillion. And that is on the conservative side. That doesn't count many of the things that are off the books that he cannot see. He's written a letter to the FBI director, Kash Patel. He has filed a case to the Texas Supreme Court. Now, he uses Texas as his jumping off point. I think that's where he lives, Texas. But he's saying this is true across the board all over America. We are paying too much in property tax. He says because these groups that are really beholding and pretty well controlled by the school districts inflate property values so they can inflate your tax, your property tax. And thus they're stripping away the equity in the homes of average Americans by the high tax burden, which he says is really not consistent with the 16th Amendment, which gives the right to tax income, not property. Perhaps this is why governors like the governor of Florida, DeSantis, has been so aggressively talking about getting rid of property tax. There are many groups that are now challenging this. There are some members of the legislature in Texas that are pushing for eliminating property tax. Now you say, well, how will you fund the needs of the schools and the fire stations, et cetera? Well, let's not forget you have the federal government taking money from the states in the form of federal income tax and then kicking the money back to the states when they do what they're told. So there's already that money coming from the feds. But then you say, well, again, what if they need more money for the children? They always wrap it around the children, don't they? I think it was Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine has several good quotes. And one of them has to do with wrapping bad ideas around some kind of moral campaign, wrapping really criminality around a moral campaign. I'll see if I can find the quote. It's a great quote that Mitch likes to give. But he's suggesting we go to a sales tax in these communities. Whatever the sales tax might be, they add on, or if you have a sales tax already in your community, you add on to it. And then you can use that. And then everyone's paying the same. We're not targeting certain people, and they can choose not to pay the tax by not spending money if they so choose. But you're not attacking their property rights, property values, and stripping away their equity in their home. I want to play a clip or two, and let's have Michael Weiner respond to this. I've watched several programs on this in the last 24 hours, and we're hoping to get Mitch Wexler on our broadcast ourselves. But this is fascinating. Here he is on one broadcast. 3 times he's been on this broadcast. I've watched all 3 episodes. Watch and listen, please.
Are exposing a ticking time bomb with Mitch Wexler. He's a whistleblower who alleges home appraisers are inflating property values to jack up taxes.
2018 to 2019, 30% jump. Based on what? Where's the inflation? It was 2.7%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 years, compound cumulative fraud on the overvaluation of the real estate. Just the face value of the bonds, the fraudulent portion of the face value, is somewhere around 5.1 trillion conservatively. People have to go to jail for this.
You're talking something much worse than 08.
08 will literally seem like a walk in Central Park. It'll be a non-existent blip. Contain the damage, i.e. controlled demolition. If you let this go on its own, heaven help all of us.
Wow.
Yeah, heaven help all of us. He likes to quote Thomas Paine, who said, the greatest tyrannies are always perpetrated in the name of the noblest causes. It's for the children, don't you know? It's for education. And he says it's fraud, and that many of the people that are involved in it, even at your superintendent or school administration level, they should very well know about it. He said many of them by now do know about it because he's been on this campaign now for a while. I guess there's something like 80 plus articles that have been written about it. And it is now being shown to, well, attorney generals, like the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton. And so he says, once these folks know this under the law, they're obligated to do something about it, or they're part of that fraud. That's what he says. I want to go to another clip, then we'll bring in Mike Weiner. Listen to this.
Why the immense pressure, and where is it coming from? Is it the bond issuers? Is it the banks? I mean, why can't the appraisers rise up, properly do their job? Why is it broken at the appraiser level?
Well, your question is really important. So why aren't the banks doing something? Who's to say that the banks and the shadow banks aren't one and the same? Who's to say that the banks, the shadow banks, and the bond underwriters aren't one and the same? So if you can generate fees as a bond underwriter, left hand of a shadow bank, you don't care about the profits, you don't care about the bondholders.
Right.
You're in it for the fees. And that actually does tie. So Jeremy Bagot, very interesting person, very smart, very shrewd, understands extremely well what happens at the appraisal level. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, HUD. Do you know that they tell the appraisers, you will hit this number or you will never get another job from us, and we may fire you if you don't? Well,
there you go.
You can't even do that under law. But nonetheless, that is what is happening. So when people say the value of this house, as an example, is $2 million, but $1 million of that $2 million was created out of thin air by virtue of the overvaluation and subsequent overtaxation at the request of the school district because they needed more money. It's all based on a predetermined budget. So you've got appraisers that are working for these CADs that should have their licenses stripped. The chief appraisers should be put in jail along with the school district superintendents, because the school district superintendents are in fact creating accounting fraud and bond fraud. So it's a cacophony of idiots literally lying, creating false financial statements, passing it up the chain and saying, well, everything's fine because the credit rating agency said so. We get a rating of AA. How bad can this be? Well, the whole purpose of this document is to say, yeah, this is really bad. This is going to explode. And the credit rating agencies are culpable, just like they were back in 2007 and 2008.
Wow.
And he says, Michael Weiner, this is $5.1 trillion on the conservative side of things. It's nationwide, and he makes the case. And he has a website that people can go to if they want to check things out. And I'll show the website here in just 1 second. It's a very important website where he has a lot of articles for you to read. Before I go to some more examples here, what do you make of what you're hearing here? And then he goes on to say, you're going to need things that don't have debt onto them. You need to be out of debt. He's a developer, but he's not wanting to develop houses and whatnot in this environment because he's like, this is a big problem. How can I go in and develop stuff and get renters in here if I have loans and other things to service? Now, someone that's completely debt-free, he said, you're in a different situation. But he said, this system cannot operate. It's going to seize up. That we have about 37% of Americans that are living with a threshold of about $9,000, okay? And $7,000 on average goes to property tax. So it only leaves them about a $2,000 buffer. They keep jacking these property taxes up. Eventually, you're going to have about 37% of these people in America lose their house, okay? So he's saying this is a huge deal. That's why he's taking a case to the Supreme Court in Texas. He's alerted the Attorney General. He's written a letter to Kash Patel, the FBI director. He says he's in communication, as I understood it the other day, from watching the show with the FCC. Now, what do you make of all this? Because it's tied back to bonds, which is that not tied back to the retirement accounts of many people? Is it not, again, going to impact our banks? And of course, the banks are holding these homes and these mortgages. So he goes on to say he recommends things like gold and silver. So I thought, of course, this would be right up your alley as an old-time lawyer and financial guy. I mean, you've seen this before, right?
Yes, and let's go back to the Intelligence of Worldview weekend, and when we did a show months ago regarding the fact of overpriced housing market. And some of the people who influence that overpriced housing market are the appraisers, and the benefiters are the real estate agents. And it goes back to the same thing. This is huge because this plays into the complete deep state of bonds and property taxes and the ridiculousness of how the states and the people in the background are enriching themselves with it. It goes on to see how much some of these people in these county offices get paid more salaries and more money than the president of the United States. $500,000, $750,000. It's ridiculous. And reality is, from all of this situation, how much of those extra dollars actually get to the school system? That's the big thing out of this. They tax us. They charge us property taxes. It supposedly disseminates through the various different services that we get in the city. But when you break it down, it's almost the same Ponzi scheme that people find out about charities. When you put in dollars into that, how much money actually gets to the bottom line? Very little. It's a complete paper Ponzi scheme. It's unbelievable. When you look at the numbers that he's talking about here and how they break down the dissemination of dollars, where they go, how much actually benefits the taxpayers themselves and their families? Probably less than a couple of percent, but we pay out trillions of dollars. So it's not just bonds on property taxes, it's bonds that even are sold to people that we invest in that are based on nothing more than smoke and mirrors. And these people that are appraisers that deal with these various different agencies have their arms twisted behind their back to perpetuate this fraud. Somebody's got to pull it out. I give this man credit. I'm surprised that this is almost something where he'd have almost a threat on his life, just because this is $1 trillion black market. And that's why he leans on gold and silver, because it's a tangible, real asset versus something on paper, which is games are played every day, every single day. It's unbelievable, Brandon. This is something that could be bigger than 2008. And Trump administration is trying to take some control by taking Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and going public with it. They're trying to uncover some of this. I'm waiting to see what Kash Patel and some of these people in the state are actually going to step up and do the right thing. This is a call out to all of them. And if they don't, the end of the tunnel is very dark.
Yeah, the end of the tunnel is very dark. He has a letter that he wrote to Kash Patel. Let me see if I can bring it up real quick. And you'll find this on his website. Here it is, dated 7/24/25. Kash Patel, there you go. Dear Mr. Patel, this document is forwarded to a meeting which I hereby requesting with you, wherein I will show you how in Texas, now he's talking about Texas alone, but this is all over the country, totaling about $5.1 trillion on the conservative side. Texas alone is $660 billion in outstanding school district bond fraud has occurred and been sanctioned by the state of Texas, and how the scheme has been perpetrated across the U.S. To my knowledge, this is the first time in history the laws of uniform standards of professional appraisal practices have been tied to the Texas Property Tax Code, then tied to the Texas Constitution and the Texas Education Agency, and then to the U.S. Constitution. Imagine a confined world of misfits where uncomfortable truths like state law, federal law, uniform standards of professional appraisal practices, mass appraisal standards, which required adherence and demand reflection, investigation, and thought and humility, are completely ignored in favor of subverting the rule of law by customizing software to the point of no uniformity of application of law between CAD or CADs, which has to do with the school districts, and no uniformity of application of law, appraisal, or methods between properties within CAD's property subcategories. Now, I know that gets deep into the woods, but what he is saying is that this is a $5.1 trillion outstanding fraudulent school district bond debt across the U.S., then when new bonds are sold, it's really to bring in money to pay off and pay out more and to handle the
Ponzi
interest.
scheme.
And thereby the very definition of a Ponzi scheme, right? Now,
And not only that, if you think about this, Brandon, all of this money supposedly going to goods and services and going to the school system, and our kids are dumb as skunks. I mean, it's legitimately ridiculous. We got in California, you want to talk about a bigger Ponzi scheme and property tax fraud? Go to California, go to New York. Good luck if you live in New Jersey. I mean, they take a fortune from you, and I want an accounting on it. We don't get it. Well, I mean, when I lived in California, in one of the shows we mentioned back at that time, I had to, my children all went to Christian school. You know why? Because my dollars, the property tax dollars that were supposedly going to the schools, they weren't getting it. They claimed they were broke. At the end of the day, how are they broke when trillions of dollars are flowing around? This is a complete deep state game, and if it's uncovered, it's in the trillions. It's unbelievable. And as I said, our kids are as dumb as skunk. They're smarter in India than they are here.
Look at what he writes to Cash
getting their
Patel.
water out of the lake, and they got more brains than our kids.
He says to Cash Patel, this problem is large enough to bring the U.S. economy to a halt and kick off a series of circular compounding related events that don't need to happen if this issue is dealt with quickly, and it can be dealt with quickly. The truth, math, law requires the repeal of real estate tax in favor of the uniform states sales tax, stop the equity stripping of mom and pop, and restore their balance sheet such that they own the land beneath their asset. He says that what happens is these school districts need a certain amount of money. So I guess the way this, according to the way he describes it, that's how they then evaluate the home prices based on what is needed. This is what I need in revenue, and this is then for how you appraise the houses to get what you need at the end. And he says it's fraudulent. He says it's fraudulent. Now, if you guys want to go to his website, he's got a website where he has put all of this up here. Let me find it real quick. And you can spend forever on it. It's mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD. I don't know what the DCAD stands for, but mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD. And when you go there, this is the page you're going to end up on. And you're going to find out requests sent to the SEC for support of petitioner, his amicus brief to the Supreme Court of Texas. You're going to find so much information, lots of articles that he's written on. You can sign the petition. I don't know about you, but I love the idea of getting rid of the property tax. And maybe this is, I was trying to figure out why the governor of Florida is being so aggressive on this. Well, maybe this is why. This is going to set him up above everybody else. One of the first ones out. He probably heard the political winds and felt them, and that'll set him up as he tries to run for president. But maybe he also knows this is about to be challenged in the courts, and the courts may very well strike this thing down. Because when you go to the 16th Amendment, which I think came about in 1913, the 16th Amendment allows for the taxing of income, as it's written, not land, not property. So he's saying this is completely unconstitutional. This should have been challenged a long time ago. Now, he has another document. Look at this one here. He's got so many documents. Property tax fraud. Property tax should be repealed and replaced with uniform state sales tax. Okay. And he lays down who's involved, how it's happening. But I want to concentrate on this little part down here. Ramifications. Economy is crashing due to bond debt. Texas is insolvent due to bond debt. A Ponzi scheme of biblical proportions. And he's quoting my friend, Chris Martinson. Chris has interviewed him. And you can go out and find Chris interviewing him. Property tax and property value fraud, video playlist with multiple hosts. Okay. And he talks about Godly Texas Bond. Godly Texas is the name of a town. And their debt bond. And due to the bond rollover and term length, interest being spent is far greater than the original principal. Equals compound interest calculator demonstrates accounting and bond fraud. Outstanding bond debt, which can never be paid off. The median household income cannot support this debt. Fraudulent. 22.25 trillion in overvaluation in 5 years. Now he's just talking about Texas alone, resulting in 450 billion over taxation. And he says where all this is. On average, 9% of median household income goes to real estate tax, regardless of ownership or renting. And he talks about the fact that this is going on with federal violations, federal law. And he names all the laws they're breaking. And he says, and he uses Texas just as one example, that Texas is insolvent. They could take everybody's money with their net income. So after they pay their bills, pay their taxes, you have their net income. What's left? You could take everybody's net income in Texas and you still wouldn't fix the problem. And he uses Texas as the example and says this is going on all over the country. And he's saying we're running out of time to deal with this, or this will be the next 2008 crisis that will be far bigger. And he's saying the number of people you're talking about being let, he says unemployment could go to 35% because of all the industries, all the businesses, all the companies, all the homeowners, all the entrepreneurs, everybody. You could see unemployment go to 35% over this Ponzi scheme collapse. Why are we just now hearing about this, Michael?
Why are we hearing about it? Because they don't want us to hear about it. There's so many things they don't want us to hear about. This is just a little hair on the end of a big, big problem because of the fact that paper assets can be manipulated. They can make numbers come up any way they want. And it goes into this whole situation of bonds. It goes into the situation of appraisals. It goes into the situation of why the founders of our nation put us under the gold standard. So this was something real and not paper. The reality is, you want to talk about this whole black hole that we exist in with this property tax, which should be alleviated. We can alleviate property tax, and if people would get it, if we just paid more sales tax, we could cover without income tax, we could cover without property tax, we can eliminate it all. I'd rather pay higher tax when I buy something than pay all these other taxes. We can get rid of them all and just pay when we use it, and not have to pay taxes, not have to deal with the IRS. We can get rid of all this garbage. It's the same thing as the securities industry in general. You want to talk about another black hole? Go down the black hole of backdoor money that gets paid to securities firms that sell you funds and bonds and sells you ETFs. Look up America backdoor money. They don't tell you about it. It exists, and all these companies make trillions of dollars. That's how these guys, bond guys and these fund guys, live in billion-dollar incomes, because they make backdoor money and we're not told about it. There's another Ponzi scheme. So that's why when Jamie Dimon comes out and says you got to own gold right now, is because he sees what's going on, and he knows that having real asset in your portfolio is so important. But people don't get it because it's perpetuated in the other way. If we fought individually as citizens against this property tax Ponzi scheme and these other things that are done to us, how many people believe out there that their children that are benefiting out of this are getting better school education? How many believe in Minnesota that the police officers are protecting them better because they pay property taxes? Or in California, God, for goodness sakes, where the property taxes are totally outrageous, and they don't get any better servicing as citizens of that state. They don't get an ounce of it.
He goes on to write, the median household income versus real estate tax, what he calls equity stripping. The only thing separating 30% plus of the households from bankruptcy is $9,000, of which $7,000 on average is real estate tax. How are 42 million households going to pay what they don't have today? They can't. How are 42 million households going to pay for the leverage created by the fraud at the school districts and the fraud of inflation created by the Federal Reserve? They can't. If those 42 million can't pay in, then how is it? How is the next 42 million going to absorb the first 42 million household tranche of implicit guarantee. They can't. The only solution is repeal the real estate tax, which is fraud, he says, eliminates inflation, fraud, too, restores the balance sheet to all property owners across the United States, and injects over $1 trillion back into the economy. As a result of the overvaluation and overtaxation, most people can't afford to retire on Social Security. It's an unfunded liability on the back of the taxpayers. And most people don't have the cash reserves, and if they did, the inflation would eat it away. Whatever gain you could make, the property insurance or the real estate tax will take it. This is not by accident. Price is what you pay, and value is what you receive. Where is the value in the purchase of the home price? Where is the value of being an apartment renter? At one time, owning a home had a clear advantage of equity growth by virtue of paying off the mortgage. The real estate tax has stripped that equity build to the point that the study that I did shows a straight superimposed line, one on top of the other, between owning versus renting, such that there is no advantage. The fraud has stripped the American dream of home ownership. The equity has been stripped by the fraud at the hands of the Central Appraisal Districts. That's the acronym CAD he was using a while ago. And folks, you guys should look up. I didn't know about this. I learn something every day. It's what I love about this job. I love to learn. And I just learned about the Central Appraisal Districts. And all of your states have them, and your counties. And they go around appraising the property to fund the schools, which is where the bulk of the money goes to. And you're telling me that you don't think your superintendent and a bunch of those educrats don't know what's going on? So he said it's done at the hands of the Central Appraisal Districts, which are owned by the taxing elites, the school districts. That's the fox guarding the henhouse. And allowed to continue at the hands of legislators and judges who refuse to do what is so clear to be done, which is repeal the property tax in favor of the uniform state sales tax. The nonstop demand for more bonds to cover off the bonds that were not paid off but rolled up and out equals a Ponzi scheme. And he's saying that the accounting fraud is the intentional manipulation of financial statements to create or hide corporate transactions or create false appearance of financial health that can involve individuals or groups of managers, accountants, and other employees in an organization, misleading investors and shareholders, legal and regulatory authorities, and the public. A company, aka school districts, can falsify its financial statements by overstating its revenue, not recording expenses, and misstating assets and liabilities. He said the accounting fraud is 60 times larger than Enron.
He's right. The problem here, again, lies in the fact that this country, when we, in my opinion, and I'll take it back to 1971, when we went off of a reality economy and went into a paper-driven economy, everything happened. Everything from politicians who all of a sudden started spending 50 years in office, track it. Prior to 1971, people in Congress spent 2 terms. Now they spend 50 years because they have unlimited checkbooks. Everything is done on paper. That's why paper assets and these games that go on. If people have to understand, let's say you pay 8% sales tax in your state. If you just raised it to 11, you can eliminate IRS, you can eliminate property tax, you can do all of it. But they don't want to do that because that would eliminate all these other baloney jobs that are out there right now, and money would actually have to go back to the people.
Yes.
And that when they talk about
even if
the
you did
people's house right
15%, you're saying 11%. All right, go to 15%. And you could do all of this with 15%.
You don't, and you would not have income tax. You would not have W-2. Your whole world would change. But think about
we would be a rich nation. No one would have an excuse not to have plenty of money by the time they reach middle age and be able to take care of themselves at the end of their own life.
Correct. And
but that would stop the politicians from plundering, and they want the untold amounts of money to plunder for themselves and their special interest and to keep people enslaved. So they have to keep running to the polls to vote for them to keep their entitlements showing up. I don't know who told me this years ago, but I love it. The middle class are like a cow, and the elite milk the cow. the middle class. They keep the cream for themselves and their special interest groups and their buddies. They give the rest of it to the underclass who run to keep voting for them, while the middle class keeps getting milked, taken advantage of, and abused. That's what they're doing. And I'm sick. I'm sick of it. I am absolutely sick of it. And the trillions of dollars we give away to countries that want to kill us. We're giving $40 million a week to the Taliban. They cannot get the bill to pass the Senate to stop giving $40 million a week, the last figure I saw, to the Taliban. Now, why on earth are we paying taxes for this kind of garbage? And now we find out the whole thing is a scam. And in fact, look at this, Michael. He says, he explains, at one point, he explains how it happens. And I guess how it's done is you overstating revenue, implicit guarantee of mom and pop. Okay, so you overstate the value of homes, so you can then raise the property tax on said home, and then you can use that to fund your school districts, of which the bulk of the money goes to. Talk about a scam. And if you question it, then you're anti-public education. You're not for the children. Let me tell you where the money's going. The money's going to these disgusting slobs and the educrats. The educrats. Have you guys seen, can someone please bring up that woman with the, what is that woman's name that just wrote the book with the American Federation of Teachers? You guys know what I'm talking about? And, I mean,
Rachel Weinberger, that lunatic.
Well, we'll
that
find out.
Weinstein or whatever.
You got to, you'll know her when you see her. Okay, but to me, she is the.
I don't want to look at her.
No,
I've seen
you
her
don't.
before. She's
Exactly.
evil. She's a witch.
She's horrible. And this, to me, is a perfect symbolism and caricature of the average bureaucrat. Randy, you have a video of Randy?
Randy Weingarten.
This is the epitome of the average educrat who makes you want to throw up in your mouth when you look at them, much less have to hear from them, who I believe are part of all this, what they're doing to our kids, as well as financially to us and our children and our grandparents, our parents. Do we have a video of this piece of trash? Because that's what she is, I think. And Randy, if you don't like it, come on my show.
The teachers union should be totally abolished. And I believe, based on how the educators are handling right now, all the way down to college, I think that I blame the parents for not getting involved. And as far as these elementary school teachers that are out of their mind, I give them all a lie detector test every year at the beginning of the year. And are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Are you not going to say this? Are you not going to say it? And let them admit to it, and then certify all of them, recertify them every single year, and make sure that they're teaching education, and if not teaching propaganda.
I could give a quiz to the average history teacher in America, and they would fail it. I can promise you that. Watch this piece of garbage. Here we go. You ready?
And I don't want to lift up the founders as, great on every way, because they were not. What fascists want, and we see this, is they fear knowledge, and they fear pluralism, and they fear art towards justice, and they fear community. Any campus is an engine, not only of democracy, but an engine of the cohesion of a society that wants to find the promise of America, the real promise and potential of America. They started with weaponizing anti-Semitism. They started cutting all sorts of cancer research and other research. And when all of these started failing, particularly after the Harvard case, then they started with this loyalty oath, this Faustian bargain, this McCarthyism in 2025. The Trump administration has tried many ways now to stifle, to censor the alchemy of university.
All right, let's stop there. That woman's so full of garbage.
What they ought to do for what that woman did during COVID and what she caused with our children, with what she perpetuated with the ridiculous teachers all around the country and did with the states that would listen to her, she should be in jail. She's an idiot. And I would love to debate her. I challenge her. Get on the stage with me and let's have some fun. When I get done with her, she will definitely be done. Totally done. Complete.
And this is our opinion. And if she doesn't like it, she's welcome to come on the broadcast. But this is the epitome, folks, of what we're really funding, I believe, along with the National Education Association, which has totally promoted communism, globalism, anti-parent for decades.
Debate me on your show, Randy. With Brandon, we'll sit back and coordinate it all. Let's see who wins. I want to talk about educating America. Let's talk about a solid Christian foundational education against your absolute random stupidity.
Yep. Here's some more of our intelligence. Here we go. One more.
Republicans, Democrats, Independents,
Oh,
black, brown, white, this 68-year-old Jewish baby boomer, Muslim small business owners, Christian Gen Zers. This is, as iGen said, we are the majority of America. And what do we want? What do we want? We want the promise of America for everyone. We want a voice in our future. We are standing up in peaceful, patriotic protest, just like our founders called out. No thrones, no crowns, no kings.
Whatever. While they take countless amounts of money from us, we want to prosper and be free, but we can't even own our own property. You don't even own your own property. You have to pay the government, even after your house is paid off, to have the right to keep living in your house. Is that what that woman considers freedom? Because this is how the schools are funded.
She's made a fortune. She's made a total fortune. She's made it. The teachers union and the idiots that follow her, they should all be removed. We've got the dumbest kids in the world right now. Thank you, Randy Weingarten. We're like 27th. Our kids are dumber than Bangladesh, probably. I mean, it's ridiculous. And that's why people are forced to send their children to private schools, because of the fact I do not trust the public school system. Sorry, America.
Supposedly her salary was like $560,000 a year. Did you know that? Her salary was reportedly $560,000 a year.
Really, I think my grandson is 6 is smarter than her. So,
well, all of this comes back to well, let me play a clip. Here's another clip as we get ready to wrap with Michael Weiner, because this is such shocking information, folks, that shows us that we're even closer to the verge of a financial collapse than I even knew. And I thought we were close, but we're even closer. Watch this. Watch this. Chris Martinson interviewing Mitch.
He's in this whole story. So the second thing you said was that they just sort of pulled all this, what's supposed to be a very, well, let me put it this way. This is how the real estate property tax process is supposed to work. Every box is a process. There are laws, there are rules, there are guidelines, there are professional standards. And that's how it's supposed to work. But what you just said is it works like this. The county or district needs more money. They pull the tax pieces out into a spreadsheet. They communicate that number to the appraisal firm, like whisper, wink, wink. Hey, we'd like 7% more. And then the firm bumps all the property values up by that needed amount, shoves that spreadsheet back into the system, presses the button. I get a tax bill that goes up by X%, right?
It's based on a predetermined amount, and that in and of itself is where the fraud starts. So your school districts say, we need money. We need money for the children. Okay. First off, that is a straight up lie. They do not need money for the children. In fact, many schools in Texas are closing down. Here's the problem. The debt never went anywhere. So if you close those schools down, you, the school district, have committed bond fraud because you didn't tell any of the bondholders that you were going to be closing these schools in a set period of time. You knew it was coming and you didn't do anything about it. That's bond fraud. And when the world of the bonds, those holders wake up, these school districts are going to get sued into oblivion, rightfully so. But again, it is always worse. Why is the money not going to the children where it really should be going, right? It should be going to education, and it should be going to get good teachers. You got to get the fat out of there. But the truth of the matter is it isn't. It's going to pay the cumulative interest that has been compounding because they have not paid off the principal of any of the bonds for dozens of years. And that's the problem. We literally have charts that show that they were going to be paying these bonds off in 2024. Well, this was a school district in particular. Right now, today, it's got $3 billion in outstanding bonds and started with $110 million.
$3 billion. Hang on. What collateralizes these bonds? I thought taxpayers' homes were the collateral in this story.
No, you can't get to the houses, right? So what's the real collateral? It's mom and pop. School districts have no assets. Their land isn't worth 10 cents. It's levered to the hilt. The buildings levered to the hilt by the bonds. The real asset for a school district isn't even the children. It's the parents. It's mom and pop. So it's an implicit guarantee. There's no such word. I made that term up. Implicit guarantee means nothing. There's no guarantee. There isn't a single person in the United States who ever signed a document that said, I am prepared to go bankrupt to backstop my school district.
Well, how do they get to mom and pop?
I'm sorry, say it again.
How do they get to mom and pop, Mitch? Where does the money come from?
Well, what happens, the central appraisal districts receive a demand from the school districts in the form of a budget. This is the money that we need. This is your demand, central appraisal district, hit this target. Well, that has nothing to do with uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. That has nothing to do with real estate valuation. That has to do with a wish list. The problem with the wish list is it's a fraud. The predetermined budget is 100% fraud. We have figured out that the school superintendents are in fact committing accounting fraud. They simply say we need X, but it gets worse because it turns out that Ken Paxton himself has violated the law. And the law here in Texas is there's a 25% cap on the preceding bonds outstanding for that school district of that year. While you have certain school districts like Argyle that have gone up over 275% above the 25%. Ken Paxton's job is to ensure, he is the sole signator, to ensure that there is revenue available to pay off these bonds. There isn't. The school districts are bankrupt. And by the way, I defy any person in the government to simply sit down with a piece of paper and say, okay, we got X amount of dollars outstanding in bonds. How are we going to pay it off with an amortization schedule at 7% compounded over 30 years, effective today? The answer is you can't. So you see, we're at the tipping point.
I want to get into that data because it's just so illuminating in a not good way. But first, we're going to talk about Texas. We're going to look very specifically. I believe the fractal tells the larger story. So we're going to look at the data you've sent me. But before we do, we're talking Texas. How many other states would you say are in comparable condition or situation so people listening will understand if this applies to them?
As far as we know, we have not been able to find a state that is not in this mess because the school districts are bankrupt. And we haven't found one that isn't. Let's put it that way. I mean, there are some that are, I would say they're less criminals and more criminals.
How many states have you looked at, would you say? Roughly.
Pretty much everybody. There's nobody that we have seen yet because we're getting emails, I kid you not, every 15 to 20 minutes around the clock. So the data that's coming in, we'll look at this and look at that. And I spent several hours. I have known that Ohio was in trouble. There's a fellow by the name of Bob Hall. You were showing those clips at the beginning. Well, Mr. Hall is an 84-year-old vet in Ohio whose real estate taxes are more. It's $3,600 of what he's being commanded to pay. He's on fixed income. He's a vet. He's 84 years old. He doesn't have the money. So these morons at the government there basically saying, go to assisted living. Do you have any idea what assisted living costs? A, he doesn't need it. B, it's $84,000 a year. C, what in the world for? Like, you can't possibly be this dumb. It's $3,400 versus $84,000, $3,600 versus $84,000. Yet, when I say they can't possibly be this dumb, yeah, I'm wrong.
Dumb or evil greedy.
Yeah.
So I want to, okay, so as far as we know, this, what we're about to describe, could apply to any state anybody happens to live in the United States, including Hawaii. So let's go through this. You sent me this spreadsheet. Hey, folks, we're going to go through this spreadsheet. Don't try and absorb it all at once. We'll step through it.
All right, and we're going to get into more of this later. But this gentleman that he was talking about in Ohio, he bought his house years ago, okay? And he didn't pay, compared to what he paid, what you would pay today, it was not much. I mean, he's got to come up with $3,600 a year for his property tax. Well, they keep taxing him on this house over and over and over and over. that, you know, is well beyond now what he's probably paid for the house so many decades ago. And he's like, I can't afford this anymore. But they keep taxing the guy who doesn't have children in the schools, obviously. He's a vet. And they're saying, well, then you need to leave and go to assisted living. Well, assisted living is $80,000 a year. So this is how dumb we are as a country. We boot people out of their homes over their property tax, force these seniors into retirement homes, of which then the government has to come along and pay for it. Not to mention we're stealing any inheritance that could go to his children. But then who's going to pay and take care of that $80,000 bill? Is the government going to come along and take care of it? More than likely. So you see how we are just propagating this socialism and destruction of wealth in the middle class. For what purpose? To enrich the bureaucrats and the special interests.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's pretty much why we talk about what happened during 1933 when Roosevelt was brilliant in his corruption, when he changed the currency, devalued the dollar. And people, I talk about the fact of when they lost their land in Texas and all that Texas oil land, and ranchers and farmers lost their land. It's because they couldn't pay their property taxes, and the state and the government took their property. So they didn't have money because they literally devalued their value of their paper money. And then in those days, the gold money was backed by gold, but the government made gold illegal. Right now, for those people out there that are doing anything, that's why we talk about protecting yourself. In this crazy world that we're living in right now, if you live under the assumption you really control your assets, you really control your bank account, you really control the stock you own, you don't control anything. The only thing you control is what you have in your possession. Possession is 9/10 of the law. That's why we talk about owning gold. That's why Brandon and I talk about being rich enough to rent, because it's becoming very, very seriously considered by some people. Why buy a house? Just rent it. It's a lot smarter. In some ways, that's not stupid.
Well, he said he did the study, and now with what they're paying, what you have to pay for property tax and stripping away your equity you're paying back in, plus your utility bills and your upkeep and everything else. He's saying you're stripping out all their equity. Let me go to one final clip.
Right.
Because people say, well, we'll just print our way out of this. All right, listen to this. This is Chris Martinson.
Why we get along so well. You and I met at Limitless because I put up this chart this is the macro scale. This is across total all sector debt in the United States, TCMDO, well over 100 trillion now, which includes this 5 trillion we're talking about. And the debt's growing faster than income. So this is at the national scale. But you said, Chris, I have the same chart at the Denton County level, right? Because it's the same idea. We're just piling debts up and up and up. There's all these people feasting off of that, getting their 2 and 20, thinking they have a pension on the back end. They're politicians getting the grafty spin around so they can get reelected. And meanwhile, nobody's looking at the underlying, which is that this is destroying the fabric and the households of this country, right? And I just want to point out that here's a consequence of this housing scam. In 1992, the average age of a first-time U.S. homebuyer was 28. Now it's 38. That is a lost decade, and it's accelerating of late because of the exact scam you're talking about. And this is a moral abomination as far as I'm concerned.
It's a financial crime against humanity because it's not just in the United States, as it turns out. Right? So what's
really?
Yeah, Canada, same position. Anything that touches uniform standards of professional appraisal practice, that's the nexus between all of this. Mm-hmm. And USPAP is across the globe. We reversed engineered. I've got all the documents and spreadsheets that's on my website. We reverse engineered USPAP. It truly is about quantifying the value and doing a proper appraisal. It is completely ignored. In fact, as of yesterday's email that I sent to my attorneys, we're about to launch 2 lawsuits, one of which will be criminal, the other one of which will be civil, for damages as a result of a registered professional appraiser saying, well, this value, I think this value is $2.4 million, when the real value is, by what just happened across the street as a true comparison, is roughly $1.24 million. Well, there's your damages.
Wow, over $1 million different appraisal in that neighborhood, that home, versus the one across the street. You know, he's saying, by the way, Michael, that he's working to go after criminally the people that are mailing out these tax bills because they're perpetrating, he says, the fraud now using the post office. And so every tax statement he says is going out with this on here is part of the fraud. I mean, it's amazing what he says, and everybody should go, in my opinion, and look at what he's saying to make sure I've represented it correctly as the best I've done to do. But the website is mockingbirdproperties.com/D as in dog, C as in cat, A as in apple, D as in dog. mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD. And they should read all the stuff that's on here, Michael.
You're right. Well, I want to I never mention this, but my better half, who passed away prior to coming to Arizona, she was in law school with me. She actually was a property tax lawyer, very successful. She represented big companies. And what was really interesting is when she would go in and dispute the government, she would win all the time because she would constantly prove that the appraisers had misappropriated and also misstated values to the tune of millions of dollars. Millions. It was unbelievable what she used to catch.
I have a friend of mine that does that. Every time they send her a tax bill and her properties have gone up, she goes through, she hires somebody.
And fights it.
She hires a company, okay? And I don't know what you got to pay them, $1,000, $2,000, but whatever you pay them is
a lot more.
You're going to pay a lot more in the tax versus paying them the $1 or $2 to fight your case. And then they come through and they show you what is in the house, okay? My house is, in her case, her house is like 50 years old, right? And she's like, look at my house, okay? This is 50-year-old tile. This is a 50-year-old bathroom. She goes and now her house is nice. It's a beautiful home. It's a welcoming home. She knows how to decorate. It's a beautiful home. It's just 50 years old. It doesn't have all the new stuff. They've updated some, but they go through and they show with pictures, this is what this house is. If you were to buy this house, a lot of people would come through and they would gut the bathrooms and they would redo them. Okay. And you're appraising my house basically as though I have gone through here and gutted every bathroom and done all this. And I'm telling you, your appraisal's wrong. And she hires this company. They come through, they take the pictures, they do the documentation. She pays them the couple $1,000s or whatever it is. And she wins every time. And she saves far more than the money she pays the company to do this. And she wins every stinking time, which to me shows they know what they're doing is wrong, right?
Absolutely. I sat in tax court with her. They have actually hearings every year in California. I actually sat in the courtroom and listened to it. And 99% of the time they win if you fight it. So I tell everybody right now, fight your property taxes. You can do it if you want to. I do, and I win every time. I've won every single time on my rental properties, all my other stuff. I've always won. So I still want Randy Weingarten on a debate. Come on, Randy. Let's go, girl.
Come on, Randy. For you. So how does all this end? How does this all end? Well, he says it's going to end with a collapse of these bonds, tied back to the banks, tied back to all kinds of industries. And it's going to be, and his number 5.1 trillion, he says, is super conservative because there's a bunch of stuff off the books that he can't see. And a lot of these school districts, I guess, he says that even one school district, Ken Paxton supposedly sent a letter to, told him to go pound sand. Apparently would even tell Ken Paxton the stuff he was wanting to know that they can't see. So this again is where I go back to. Then we could start talking about the state pensions, right? And then how about the derivatives, Michael? How about the derivatives, these junk investments that the banks are holding? So you've got bogus bonds with the schools. You've got a problem with the bankrupt retirement pension accounts in states. You got the banks with these derivatives, right? So how many more things do I need to list before people realize there is no way to save this system, which is why they're working to reset it. And when they reset it, they're going to have to devalue the dollar.
Value and revalue, devalue and revalue, and that's why you own gold. We said it 100 times, and what's going to happen is some people are going to recover and be okay, the ones we work with, and some people are going to sit back and take a hit and not recover, and some people are going to pay more later. Stop worrying about the price of gold going up or down. Just understand the fact that gold is going to be the one anchor within your life to give you stability in these times, period. I'm done.
Absolutely. All right, get your free packet at worldviewgold.com, worldviewgold.com. Again, worldviewgold.com, or text Wes your name and address at 602-558-8585, 602-558-8585. He'll send it along. You can find out how to take gold into your possession. You can find out about putting gold into your IRA. You'll find out the difference between bullion versus numismatic. Now, talk to me real quick before I let you go about this major correction in gold, down $250 in one day. People are freaking out. I'm like, of course, I think it's a good idea that it came down because
it's healthy. It's healthy. The markets, nothing should go straight up. It already recaptured some of it already. If you buy it just because you're concerned about the price, then don't do business with me. I'm not here for every day in the market. I don't even look at it 10 times a day. The reality is, if you're in it long term, the trend is long term, 5,500 the end of next year, 7,000 or better by the time Trump leaves. I hope it corrects itself because that's healthy. You cannot have a market go straight up without having corrections. Welcome to the stock market. Go complain about that. Literally.
I'm out. That's all. Right, Michael?
I'm done. I'm done.
All right. Thank you,
Literally.
Michael. Have a great weekend.
Goodbye, Dolly.
Michael Weiner checking in, 602-558-8585 or worldviewgold.com. We'll be right back.